The moment my mind begged me to quit was the moment I knew I had to push harder. There are nights when my body is exhausted and my mind sounds reasonable for the first time. It says, "You've done enough. Rest. Tomorrow will be better." That's when I learned something dangerous. The moment I realized my mind was my biggest enemy was the moment everything changed. I'd been living in a constant state of compromise, convincing myself that enough was really enough. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I knew that as long as I let my mind decide what I could and couldn't do, I would never reach my potential. Your mind doesn't want you to grow. It wants you to stay safe. It wants comfort. It wants excuses. It wants the path of least resistance, even if that path is slowly destroying you. Every morning, when the alarm blares and my body is heavy with fatigue, that voice creeps in. It whispers, "You don't need to push today. You can rest." At first, it seems harmless, even logical. Who in their right mind would question it? It feels reasonable. It feels like a friend, but it isn't. That voice is the same one that has held people back for decades. It's a liar disguised as a guide. It tells you that comfort is safety, but comfort is the most dangerous trap you will ever step into. It is a soft prison, invisible and seductive, and it will suffocate your dreams if you let it. I remember the first time I really faced this truth. I had set a goal for myself that felt impossible. My body ached from the weight of the challenge. Every muscle screamed for rest. My lungs burned. Sweat poured down my face, dripping into my eyes, stinging, blinding, reminding me of every excuse I had ever used. And right then, my mind started talking. "Stop. You're tired. You've done enough." Every part of me wanted to obey. Every instinct begged for surrender. But in that moment, I recognized the difference between weakness and strength. Weakness listens to that voice. Strength doesn't. Strength is born in those precise moments where your mind says no more and you respond with yes. One more step, one more rep, one more mile. It is in the struggle, in the discomfort, in the pain where growth lives. Your mind wants comfort because it fears the work, it fears the unknown, and it fears the truth, that you are capable of so much more than you allow yourself to be. The human brain is a master storyteller. It will fabricate reasons, paint scenarios, and invent obstacles to keep you safe. But growth is never safe. Comfort is never transformative. Discipline is never convenient. I began to understand that my mind would always resist change, always fight progress. If I wanted to become the person I knew I could be, I had to retrain my mind, not my body. My body could be pushed, exhausted, and tested endlessly, but it was the mind that dictated whether I would quit or persevere. The battle was invisible, internal, and far more brutal than anything I had faced physically. I had to confront my mind every single day, not with anger, but with unwavering resolve. I had to tell myself the truth, even when my mind was screaming lies, that the only way to grow was to leave comfort behind, to embrace the pain, to run toward the fire instead of away from it. Every small victory over that voice built momentum. One day I went further than I thought possible in training. Another day I endured the mental exhaustion of pushing through tasks I had been avoiding. Slowly, I began to notice a shift. My mind, which had been my greatest adversary, started to respect me, not because it became easy, not because it stopped resisting, but because I refused to obey it blindly. Every time I chose action over excuses, every time I chose discomfort over ease, I rewired the circuitry of my willpower. I created a habit of victory over my own thoughts. I realized that comfort is seductive, but only courage and persistence give freedom. Only discipline produces power. Only persistence defeats the mind's lies. The truth is simple but brutal. Your mind is designed to protect you, not empower you. It will always urge you to settle, to pause, to rest, to take the easy path. It will offer rationalizations that feel logical but will leave you stagnant. If you follow it blindly, you will never know how far you can really go. The difference between those who fail and those who succeed isn't luck or talent. It's the willingness to do what your mind tells you not to do. It's the courage to step outside the bubble of comfort and stare into the chaos of growth. Growth will hurt. Growth will be lonely. Growth will be uncomfortable. But growth is the only path to strength. Growth is the only path to greatness. Growth begins the moment you refuse to let your mind control you. Discipline isn't loud. Discipline isn't flashy. Discipline doesn't post online or seek validation. Discipline doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care how you feel, what excuses you have, or how tired you are. It just exists. It's the silent, unrelenting force that separates those who succeed from those who stay average. Motivation is temporary. Motivation comes and goes. But discipline is. consistent, relentless, unforgiving. It is the backbone of achievement. And I had to learn this the hard way. I remember a day when I had nothing left. My body was screaming at me to stop. Every muscle in my legs burned. My lungs felt like they were on fire. My mind was whispering every excuse in the book. You've done enough. You're tired. Take a break. Go home. That voice was seductive. It sounded reasonable, like it was looking out for me. But I knew better. I had learned that my mind's idea of care was often my greatest obstacle, and I knew the only way forward was to embrace discipline, even when it felt like betrayal to my own comfort. Discipline doesn't negotiate. It doesn't say, take it easy today, you deserve a break. It doesn't say, maybe tomorrow will be better. Discipline doesn't care if the world is against you or if your friends understand. Discipline simply says, do the work. It doesn't argue, it doesn't debate, it doesn't make deals, it doesn't ask for your permission, and it never waits for motivation to catch up. Discipline is what gets you out of bed at 4 a.m. when your body is begging for rest. Discipline is what makes you train harder when your mind screams for relief. Discipline is what separates those who endure from those who fail. I learned that motivation is unreliable. I learned that motivation can vanish in an instant, leaving you stranded in the middle of a challenge with nothing but your excuses. And that's when discipline matters most. Discipline doesn't care about excuses. It doesn't bend. It doesn't compromise. It's the silent ruler of progress, and it rewards those who honor it with results. I had to understand that my feelings were irrelevant. My comfort was irrelevant. My excuses were irrelevant. What mattered was showing up, doing the work and repeating it relentlessly, even when the world told me to stop. The first Tim. I truly committed to discipline. It felt unnatural. It felt uncomfortable. It felt like I was betraying every part of me that wanted ease and safety. But over time, that commitment became a habit. Each day that I pushed myself, each time I refused to negotiate with weakness, my strength grew, not just in my body, but in my mind. I started to see the world differently. I started to understand that every person who achieves greatness doesn't rely on fleeting motivation. They rely on unshakable discipline. Discipline builds consistency. Consistency builds results, and results build unbreakable confidence. Discipline also teaches a harsh lesson. You are your own standard. No one else will hold you accountable like you can. No one else will push you past your limits. No one else will force you to do the work when it hurts. I had to stop waiting for someone to guide me, to motivate me, or to inspire me. I had to rely on my discipline alone. That's when I became dangerous. That's when I realized that the only thing standing between me and my potential was my willingness to obey discipline instead of my fleeting emotions. Every rep, every mile, every challenge became a testament to the fact that discipline doesn't negotiate. It doesn't reward the half-hearted. It doesn't forgive laziness, and it doesn't make exceptions. And that's the beauty of it. Because when you master discipline, you no longer need to rely on motivation. You no longer need comfort. You no longer need anyone else. You are unstoppable. You are unbreakable. You are relentless. Discipline transforms you quietly, invisibly, but permanently. It's not glamorous. It's not easy, but it works. And I've learned this: discipline doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect. It doesn't negotiate with pain. It doesn't argue with fear. It doesn't compromise with weakness. Discipline is the truth, the only truth, and it will always demand your best. When I realized that, I stopped negotiating with myself. I stopped rationalizing. I stopped giving in to excuses. And for the first time, I began to see real progress. Not temporary, not fleeting, but permanent. That is the power of discipline. It doesn't negotiate, it doesn't compromise, it doesn't stop, and it will never let you quit. Silence. It wasn't something I sought out for comfort. It wasn't peaceful or soft. It was raw, empty, and demanding. Silence is where the truth lives. It's where you meet yourself without excuses, without distractions, without anyone cheering you on or telling you you're enough. It's where you find out who you really are. I learned this the hard way. The world is loud, chaotic, and full of people willing to hand you comfort. But if you want real strength, if you want to become unbreakable, you have to step into silence. And in that silence, I discovered the hardest truths about myself and the ones that built me. I remember nights alone in a gym with no one around, no music, no clapping, no audience, just the sound of my own body and my own thoughts. At first, it was uncomfortable. My mind screamed at me to quit. The fatigue in my legs, the burning in my lungs, and the ache in my muscles screamed for rest. But in silence, I had nowhere to hide. There were no excuses, no distractions. Every weakness, every fear, every limitation I had been hiding from was staring me in the face, and I had a choice, to face it or to run. I chose to face it. Every single time. Silence teaches you things no one else can. It teaches patience, resilience, and discipline in its purest form. When no one is watching, when no one cares, when the applause and attention are gone, silence is all that remains. And in that emptiness, you are forced to create your own standard. You are forced to push yourself beyond the comfort of the world's noise. You are forced to rely on your own internal voice, the one that tells you to keep going when every instinct tells you to stop. That voice becomes your strongest ally if you respect it, if you train it, if you never let it settle for easy. I've seen people chase recognition, chase approval, chase applause, and think that is progress. It isn't. The real work, the work that changes you, shapes you, and prepares you for anything life throws at you, happens in silence. It happens in the moments no one notices. It happens when you're alone, tired, and unsure, but you refuse to quit. I began to understand that the gym wasn't just a place for my body to grow. It was a temple where my mind learned resilience. The weights, the pain, the sweat, they were meaningless without silence. Silence forced me to confront the real struggle, myself. Silence also builds clarity. When all the noise of the world fades, you see what matters. You see your weaknesses and your strengths. You see the excuses you've been telling yourself. You see the truth of what you are willing to do and what you are willing to give up. In the quiet, there's no hiding, no pretending, no blaming anyone else. You are forced to own your life, your decisions, and your actions. And that ownership is powerful. That ownership is freedom. That ownership is what builds warriors, leaders, and unbreakable people. Every hour I spent alone, every early morning, every long run with no one around, every grueling session where my mind begged me to quit, it all added up. Silence was shaping me, molding me into someone who could endure anything. It was uncomfortable, it was lonely, and it was brutal. But it worked. Every weakness I faced in the quiet strengthened me. Every fear I confronted in solitude hardened me. Every time I ignored the voice of giving up, I grew stronger. Silence didn't just build my discipline. It built my character, my patience, my unshakable willpower. I realized that people fear silence because it forces them to face themselves. Most people prefer noise. Noise to distract, noise to soothe, noise to avoid responsibility. But I embraced silence. I welcomed it. I ran toward it, and in doing so, I learned the hardest lessons about myself. I learned that discomfort is not the enemy. It's the teacher. That isolation is not punishment. It's preparation. That the world's applause is fleeting, but the strength you build in silence lasts forever. Silence built me because it gave me no choice but to confront the truth. It gave me no choice but to push past my limits. It gave me no choice but to depend on nothing but my own will. And that is the foundation of everything I have become. The people, the noise, the distractions, they can fade. But the discipline, resilience, and mental toughness forged in silence stay with you. They become part of you, unshakable and permanent. That is why silence built me, and that is why it will always be the most powerful force I know. There is a moment in every challenge when your body screams, your mind trembles, and every instinct screams stop. That is the moment most people quit. They don't quit because they aren't capable. They quit because they obey the voice in their head that promises comfort, safety, and temporary relief. I've stood at that line countless times in every arena, running, lifting, training, and in life itself. I've seen it clearly. The difference between the average person and the exceptional is the choice to keep going when quitting feels logical. Most people quit right here, but I refuse to. I remember one of the hardest days I've ever faced. My legs felt like lead. My lungs were on fire. Sweat poured down my face. My arms shook, and my body wanted nothing more than to collapse. My mind, clever as it is, whisper. Add every excuse you could think of. You've gone far enough. You've done enough. Stop. Take a break. You can finish tomorrow. Every word sounded reasonable. Every argument seemed logical, and for a split second it almost convinced me to obey. It was tempting, comfortable, and easy. But I had learned the brutal truth. Comfort is the enemy of progress. If I obeyed that voice, I would stay the same, trapped in mediocrity forever. Most people obey that voice. Most people give in to weakness. Most people allow excuses to dictate their limits. They tell themselves that it's okay to rest, that tomorrow will be better, that one day off won't matter. But growth doesn't live in comfort. Strength doesn't emerge from convenience. Success doesn't appear when your mind negotiates. Real transformation begins in the exact moment your mind is begging you to quit, and you choose to push further anyway. That is where the line is drawn. That is where warriors are made. That is where the world separates those who achieve from those who settle. I learned to recognize that moment early in my life. The moment when quitting feels logical is the most important moment of all. It is a test, a challenge, and a reflection of what you are willing to endure. It is a point of truth, where your character is exposed, where your limits are questioned, and where your potential is waiting. Most people fail at this point, not because they cannot endure, but because they refuse to confront their weakness. They refuse to fight their own mind. They refuse to embrace the pain, the discomfort, and the struggle. I decided I would not be like most people. I decided that my limits would be tested, and I would meet them with action, not surrender. When the burning in my legs felt unbearable, I kept stepping forward. When my lungs threatened to collapse, I inhaled and I moved. When my mind screamed enough, I answered with discipline. Every single time I made the conscious choice to continue, to push past what felt reasonable, to defy the urge to quit. I made the choice to step beyond the line that most people never cross. That choice, repeated over and over, is what builds greatness. It is what separates those who are unbreakable from those who are average. The mind will always attempt to negotiate, to rationalize, to convince you to surrender. But the body, trained through discipline and habit, will carry you when the mind refuses. The line of quitting is not external. It is internal. It is where you stand alone against yourself. It is where you confront every excuse, every fear, every limitation. And if you keep moving, even when it makes no sense, even when it hurts, even when the world whispers to stop, you cross the line that most people will never reach. Most people quit right here. They quit when it gets hard. They quit when it gets uncomfortable. They quit when the mind starts arguing with reason. But I learned that enduring these moments is where power is forged, where resilience is built, and where true discipline is revealed. Quitting may feel logical, but perseverance creates reality. Growth hides behind that line, waiting for you to refuse to obey weakness. And when you choose action over surrender, you become unstoppable, unbreakable, and untouchable. Every time I stand at that line now, I smile. Because I know most people will stop, but I won't. I never have, and I never will. That is the moment that defines everything. When quitting feels logical, and I keep going anyway, pain. Everyone fears it. Everyone avoids it. Everyone looks for ways around it. And that is why so few people ever achieve greatness. I learned early on that pain is not the enemy. It is the entry fee. Pain is the proof that you are pushing yourself beyond what your body and mind think. K is possible. Pain is the marker that separates the comfortable from the exceptional, the ordinary from the unbreakable. And if you are not willing to pay that price, you will never know your true potential. I remember days when my arms burned so intensely I thought they would collapse. When every step I ran felt like running through fire. When my lungs felt like they were on fire. And every muscle screamed for relief. My mind begged me to quit. It tried to trick me, to negotiate, to make me believe that I had already done enough. But pain is honest. Pain doesn't lie. Pain doesn't negotiate. Pain is the ultimate teacher, and the lessons it teaches are brutal, but they are also life-changing. Most people see pain as punishment. They think it is a signal to stop, a warning to turn back, a sign that they are weak. But I learned to see it differently. I learned to see pain as a measurement of progress. Every time I felt it, every time my body and mind were screaming at me, I knew I was on the edge of growth. I knew that on the other side of that discomfort was a stronger, tougher, more disciplined version of myself. Pain was not my enemy. It was my guide, my compass, my confirmation that I was doing what others refused to do. It wasn't easy to accept this truth. For years, I fought against pain, avoided it whenever I could, and chased comfort like it was salvation. But comfort only breeds weakness. Comfort only breeds excuses. Comfort will keep you average while the world passes you by. The moment I understood that enduring pain was not optional, that it was necessary, everything changed. I stopped running from it. I stopped negotiating with it. I ran straight into it. I welcomed it. I embraced it. And in that embrace, I found power, resilience, and strength beyond what I had ever imagined. Pain is the entry fee because it forces you to confront your limits. It exposes every weakness, every fear, every excuse you've ever hidden behind. And when you step into it willingly, you are forced to rise above yourself. You are forced to fight against the voice that says enough. You are forced to do the work again and again, even when it hurts, even when your body says stop, even when the world seems to be against you. Pain doesn't give you a choice. It gives you a test. And passing that test requires courage, discipline, and unwavering commitment. I've realized that the world is full of people who avoid pain. They quit early, they settle for mediocrity, and they live with regret. But those who endure, those who embrace the struggle, those who pay the entry fee with sweat, tears, and relentless effort, they become unstoppable. They become resilient. They become dangerous to anything less than their potential. Pain is not punishment. It is preparation. It is the currency that buys strength, character, and unshakable confidence. Every time I push past pain, I feel it in my body, I feel it in my mind, and I feel it in my soul. Pain reminds me that I am alive, that I am fighting, and that I am doing what others are unwilling to do. Pain is the evidence that I am committed to growth, committed to discipline, committed to being unbreakable. And I have learned to respect it, to honor it, and to seek it out. Because every time I endure, I grow. Every time I suffer, I strengthen. Every time I refuse to quit, I am transformed. Pain is the entry fee, and it is the only price worth paying. Those who refuse it will never know greatness. Those who embrace it will rise above the ordinary. Those who endure it relentlessly and without compromise will become unbreakable. I choose pain every day. I welcome it. I chase it. And I know that every drop of discomfort, every aching muscle, every screaming mind is building a version of me that cannot be stopped, cannot be broken, and cannot be defeated. I became unbreakable the moment I stopped negotiating with myself. I stopped letting my comfort dictate my actions, stopped letting fear control my choices, and stopped believing that the world owed me ease. I realized that being unbreakable isn't about talent, luck, or opportunity. It's about refusing to quit when every part of you screams to stop. It's about embracing the struggle, seeking the discomfort, and continuing forward when quitting seems logical. That is the crucible where strength is forged. That is how I became unbreakable. The first step in this transformation was accepting the truth about myself. My mind was my greatest adversary, my body was my battlefield, and my will was my weapon. For years I had been weak. Not physically, not mentally, but spiritually. I allowed excuses, comfort, and fear to dictate the boundaries of my life. I settled for average. I told myself I had limits. I listened to the voice that said, enough is enough. And every time I obeyed, I shrank. I realized that if I wanted to become unbreakable, I had to confront the totality of my weakness, every flaw, every fear, every limitation, and stare it down without flinching. Discipline became my foundation. I stopped waiting for motivation, inspiration, or encouragement from others. I realized that no one would push me harder than I could push myself. I woke up early when my body begged for rest. I trained longer when my mind screamed to stop. I ran further when my legs burned and my lungs were on fire. I sought out situations that challenged me, forced me to endure, and tested my limits. And I did it consistently, relentlessly, without compromise. That is what unbreakable people do. They refuse to settle, even when settling is easy. Pain became my teacher. Discomfort became my guide. The voice that said quit became my indicator of growth. Every time I pushed through, every time I refused to obey weakness, I rewired my mind. I began to see challenges as opportunities, suffering as a ladder, and struggle as the path to true strength. I learned that life doesn't hand you greatness. It is earned in sweat, tears, and the moments when you feel like you cannot go further but choose to continue anyway. I began to understand that unbreakable people aren't born. They are forged through relentless action, mental toughness, and unwavering commitment. Silence became my ally. While the world was distracted, noisy, and seeking comfort, I was alone with myself, testing my limits, enduring the struggle, and building resilience. I discovered that solitude reveals character. When no one is watching, when there is no applause, no validation, and no encouragement, you are left with your thoughts, your pain, and your decisions. That is where unbreakable strength is built. That is where you learn you are capable of enduring more than you ever imagined. That is where you confront your own excuses and decide definitively to rise above them. Quitting is a trap and comfort is a liar. Most people stop when it hurts, when the challenge seems impossible, when the world whispers that it's okay to settle. But I refused. I kept going. I kept pushing. I kept testing myself beyond what I thought were my limits. Every time I endured, every time I persevered, every time I refused to quit, I strengthened my mind, my body, and my spirit. I became unbreakable not in the absence of struggle, but because I confronted struggle every day and refused to yield. Being unbreakable isn't about being invincible. It's not about never feeling pain, fear, or doubt. It's about choosing to move forward in spite of all of it. It's about embracing the grind, welcoming the discomfort, and building a mindset that cannot be swayed by weakness, doubt, or external circumstances. That mindset becomes permanent. That mindset becomes unstoppable. That mindset becomes unbreakable. I became unbreakable the moment I decided to take full ownership of my life, my choices, and my actions. I became unbreakable when I stopped waiting for permission, guidance, or recognition. I became unbreakable when I stopped negotiating with my mind, stopped fearing pain, and stopped seeking comfort. And I know this truth: unbreakable people are not born. They are created in the fire of discipline, pain, solitude, and relentless action. That is how I became unbreakable. That is how I will remain unbreakable. That is how anyone can become unbreakable, if they are willing to refuse weakness, embrace struggle, and move forward no matter what. All of this, every struggle, every moment my mind begged me to quit, every ache, every burn, every step into the fire, led me to this truth: strength isn't given, it's earned. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Discipline doesn't negotiate. Silence builds resilience. Pain is the entry fee, and the moments when quitting feels logical are the moments that define you. I've learned that life isn't about waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect motivation, or the perfect conditions. Life is about showing up, doing the work, and facing your own weakness head on. It's about refusing to settle for mediocrity. It's about stepping into discomfort and making it your ally. Every time I refused to quit, I rewired my mind. Every time I embraced discipline, I strengthened my soul. Every time I welcomed pain, I built unbreakable character. Most people stop when it hurts. Most people settle when the challenge seems too hard. Most people listen to the voice in their head that promises relief. But I didn't, and I don't, because I know that the line between ordinary and extraordinary exists exactly where quitting feels logical, and I have learned to cross it again and again. Becoming unbreakable isn't about being fearless. It's about embracing fear. It's about embracing discomfort. It's about leaning into the struggle instead of running from it. It's about choosing action over excuses, persistence over surrender, and growth over comfort. That is the only way to truly transform yourself. That is the only way to become unstoppable. I am not extraordinary because of talent or luck. I am extraordinary because I refused to obey weakness. I am extraordinary because I endured. I am extraordinary because I faced my own mind, my own fears, my own limits, and I didn't back down. That is what makes me unbreakable. That is what will always make me unbreakable. And that right there is the truth for anyone willing to do the work. The path to greatness is paved with discomfort, discipline, and relentless action. So if you're sitting there, tired, hurt, or ready to give up, remember this: your mind will tell you to stop. Pain will scream. Your body will beg for rest. The world will tell you it's okay to settle. But the choice is yours. Refuse weakness. Embrace discomfort. Step into the fire. Push past your limits. Keep going when quitting feels logical. That is how you become unbreakable. That is how you rise above the ordinary. That is how you conquer yourself and achieve what most people only dream of.